This is Ready, Set, Reiki, a podcast about Reiki and all energy work, from the curious beginner to the seasoned master teacher, welcoming all systems, all lineages, all levels. Reiki is a journey and not a destination. And on this Ready, Set, Reiki journey, I refer to myself as a guide rather than host, as I too am traveling, learning, and supporting others on this Reiki journey as well. And with that said, I am your guide, Tracy Seawright, and this is Ready, Set, Reiki. Hello, Reiki family. Reiki blessings to you, one and all. Another amazing and wonderful journey. And this guest I am so excited about. I just love her energy and love connecting with her. But first, I want to tell you about a group here. So on Facebook, there is the Reiki Business Collective here, sharing, supporting, and serving. Christian Stone, this is his group. It costs $0 to join. I want you to know that you're never alone on this journey. When I started my Reiki journey many years ago, I didn't really know too much about it. I did a search and a name came up, and I only thought at that time that there was just one system of Reiki, but little did I know there are multiple different systems of Reiki out there. So here, this is a way to connect with your Reiki business community. And don't let that business name fool you. Wherever you are supported, right? People are there to help guide you and to share what they've been through and to give you guidance. So Reiki Business Collective, check it out. Well, back to the journey. So here I'd like to invite you to an amazing person. Her name is Jayne Goodsir. Now, she is a reclamation mentor and spiritual visionary. She supports qualified and aspiring Reiki practitioners to reclaim authentic connection through spiritual sovereignty rather than hierarchy, dogma, and rigid structures within her online spirit-led Reiki pathway. So let's give a warm Ready, Set, Reiki welcome. Jayne, how are you? Welcome to Ready, Set, Reiki.
Oh, it is wonderful to be here. I appreciate you so much, your work so much. So I am thoroughly delighted to be joining you.
Beautiful. So she caught my eye on TikTok. I was all in, and my kind of thing with this is it's, no gatekeeping, right? And just allowing people to really understand both sides of things going on. And I love that you're educating people and you're informing them and you're holding space. But I let our listeners know just a little bit about you, but I know there is so much more. So tell us about yourself.
So I'm Jayne, like you've mentioned, and I'm based in Scotland, though all of my work is online. And perhaps like many of your listeners, I have walked a very long path of searching, hunting down knowledge like it was sitting at the top of the tree. But actually, what I was really craving was purpose and meaning and fulfillment. So the first kind of 30 years of my life, I was chasing the things that life should look like, that typical standard of success that comes with the tick boxes, the car or the house or the corporate career and the kids. I was a radio news journalist back then. And then I realized that actually none of this external stuff really meant very much at all until true abundance was anchored from within. So what I was really craving there was, like I said before, the passion, the purpose, the zest, the meaning, the peacefulness, that internal abundance, which is, of course, a spiritual connection. So over the course of the past maybe 15 years, I have had many, let's call it deaths and rebirths, as I'm sure you'll be aware of, that beautiful cycle, light and dark. And I've gotten to know myself and love myself in ways that, at one time just never would have been possible for me. Understanding more and more about myself, which is just the most beautiful journey. But it doesn't come without challenge, right? As I'm sure you and your listeners are more than aware of. So that's really a bit about me and where I find myself at now.
Beautiful. I mean, I guess as you're talking, I think about looking back at my life, and so many times we've built things up only to have them crash down and to rebuild. So that cycle keeps going and going. It seems to happen in those of us who have been chosen to walk the healing path. But our journey here is talking about Reiki. So tell me, when did Reiki come into your life? Did you find Reiki or did Reiki find you?
A bit of both. Throughout the course of what got me from finding Reiki to where I'm at now with Reiki. So maybe just let me share a little bit on that. So I found Reiki just before I had my daughter, and it was a local in-person practitioner. And I very much enjoyed those healing sessions, bringing me more and more kind of closer to who I knew and wanted to be. I think I've always, like I mentioned before, that meaning and passion and purpose that I really was craving out of life. I really wanted, I felt called to live, to lead and to serve, aligned with the truth of who I actually am. I just didn't know then what that looked like or how I was going to get there. So in seeing that practitioner, what I realised was actually I didn't have very many tools and skills to integrate and embody the benefit of those sessions back in my everyday life. And she had said to me a few times, you're special and you're gifted and you should go and do Reiki training. And of course, at that time, that really did play in. It really did play into my ego at that time, being perfectly honest. Not that I'm saying ego's a bad thing, and ego is necessary. And in many respects, for me and the work that I do now, I notice females, femme presenting, I mean that in all sense of the word, really have to work at building the ego up. But where I was at that time, that was playing into this. I'm special. Which of course we all are. We all have a natural healing ability, right? So at that point, I went and did Usui Reiki training, Usui Reiki Ryoho. So was trained in initially. So I did Reiki 1, Reiki 2, and Masters. And after that, I just started to have questions that my Reiki master nor others could really help me to get to the root of. And I was unfurling more and more questions as I went. Mostly now I understand surrounding a spiritual connection. The pathway of spiritual reconnection, I've found, certainly in my experience and those of my students and my graduates, isn't really readily available at most mainstream Reiki training. And the same with intuitive clarity. That pathway is kind of like with mainstream Reiki training, kind of we cobble it together by ourselves and find that level of trust. But at the time, those questions for me surfaced like, I feel there's something missing here, or there's deeper power available, or questions on energetic hygiene, on symbols, on hand positions. And probably most importantly for me now that I recognise it and can put words and give language to it, I understood that there was this disconnect between, it felt like a bit of a mismatch, a fragmentation, right? Between Usui Reiki, so Japanese methods, practices, protocols, and my obviously inherent way of working as a Western person. So I would ask these questions, and what would happen is just refer to the handbook or just trust your intuition. So that eventually sent me on this trajectory to reclaim my own authentic Reiki medicine, free of gatekeeping, free of hierarchy, free of strict rules. And that was honouring and aligned with my own animistic, cultural and ancestral roots. So I set about, I had about 4 or 5 years out where I interviewed people, practitioners, Reiki practitioners, all different lineages from around the world, to understand the common threads and themes of what they were finding, gaps almost in their training. I did a lot of research into the origins and history of Reiki, and did more skill building. I'm a Celtic shaman. I did shamanic practitioner training. I understand that can raise a lot of questions, especially around cultural appropriation, and I'm more than happy to answer those. But essentially, I did all that so that I could co-create my own sovereign path forwards with Reiki. That is to root spiritual authority, to build energetic integrity, and to embody my own authentic Reiki medicine. So that's what I co-created for myself with my guides, and that is now, of course, my online spirit-led Reiki pathway.
Beautiful. Well, I've been very blessed to have so far 200 episodes, and as talking to other practitioners, there's only so much information that you can teach in a one-day training, right? And then you do your level 1, then you go to the next day, level 2. And I love that you went and continue to research, to go beyond what you got in that particular class, and you're able to interview and talk to other practitioners with that. And you do kind of see this rigid way of doing things, and it kind of, the traditionalists, or there's only one way to do that. But when you look at the history, Michael Azui, he was kind of, in a sense, building the plane in the air, where he was kind of like being guided by the energy. So you're doing the essence of what he was doing. You're following and letting the energy guide you. Now, we can say from the Gakkai, well, there's all these strict rules, but those presidents from after Azui, they didn't have that connection. Azui had connection directly with source, right? Where those presidents had hands-on. We have to look at a different perspective of it, that there are other ways to do that, and to be open with that and follow your own path. So this is why I call it a journey, because it's not a destination. You're going to go along and find, what? I'm going to take this road. I'm going to take that road. Hey, I might need to take a step back. So I love that you're able to kind of take that and say, what? These pieces are connecting, and let me find this connection.
Absolutely. I think what you're saying, holds so much weight. For me, I'm often asked about, are you rejecting tradition? And for me, it's no, I'm honoring tradition's highest purpose. We all have each individual, all of us have our own authentic style of working with Reiki energy, universal life force energy, where we don't have to access that via hierarchy, attunements, levels, etc., etc. What we can do is develop our own direct spiritual connection with the pure, clear core, the essence of Reiki energy itself. And for me, that is, like I say, honouring tradition's highest purpose. Think of the spiritual revolutionaries. Think of, exactly as you're saying here, Usui and the direct spiritual connection that he had. That's not singular and exclusive to one person. Everybody can work through direct spiritual connection with this energy in the most beautiful way that just aligns with who they are, the authenticity and the sovereignty, the personal power that sits within each of us. Beautiful.
Right. And I mean, if we look at society today, we have things that were rooted in tradition that may not have been the best thing. And we've either stopped them or reshifted and changed. I think a prime example is the Catholic Church, right? How it has evolved in time to different things. I remember, as a child, my stepmother, who I would color as a devout Catholic, and my half sister, it was like so taboo with things. And then I remember, a few years ago when my sister had passed, it's like, oh, well, we can cremate now. We're not going, we'll still go to heaven, right? But that was frowned upon. That was a big no-no. But look at how it has evolved with something that was rooted in tradition, right? And all those years behind it. But now we look at it today and say, yeah, there may be another way, this open-mindedness to say, let's reconsider this. So as you've gone through, as you have your graduates, your clients, you have gone through this stress-reducing modality here, what are you finding are some of the misconceptions in all of your study and learning regarding Reiki?
I have found there to be huge amounts of misconceptions about Reiki, but let me focus in on the biggest one that I find. The biggest one that I find is that we need an attunement to access Reiki energy, Reiki being universal life force energy. It isn't owned by any one specific person. Now, I like to think of it like this. Replication says that we must be given access to something by someone else higher up the ladder through levels and through lineage and through a system that keeps us reaching outwards. But for me, what if reclamation says no rigid rules, no energetic outsourcing, no gatekeeping what is already ours to claim? We can connect, like I was saying before, with the pure clear essence of Reiki energy, the spirit of Reiki, by ourselves, by what I call spirit-led Reiki journeying. we're essentially bridging the spiritual and the earthly realms as the safe and effective hollow bone, middleman free. And for me, like I said before, that isn't about rejecting tradition. It's about fostering that direct spiritual connection, because we've all got our own way of working with Reiki energy. So yeah, attunements, I would say, probably is the biggest one that I come across. Kind of moving away from this permission-based access to Reiki energy to work in a way that feels more authentic and just innately aligned with who we are, each of us.
Right. That's a lot of controversy online. You have some that say absolutely not. It has to be in person. You can't do online. It has to be with it. If you look at the system of Azui and Holy Fire 3 Reiki, that's that connection where the teacher does not touch the student. You have that own individual experience. And it's the understanding that if the teacher touches the student, it could, not on purpose, but kind of lower the quality of that energy unintentionally. So that kind of honors the way it was connected with Azui Sensei. And so you have another way of that. But many people look and say, nope, it has to be hands-on. It has to be this way, in this order, and there's no other veering to this. But as I had mentioned with Azui kind of figuring it out as he goes, when that tsunami happened, he had to figure out a way to do something, and it could be unique to every single student that he connected with. So why can't we use this if we're guided by the energy, this universal energy? Who is to say that we can't feel this connection? I know I can watch a movie or I can watch something on the news and I can feel that emotion through my body. Like, whoa, I can easily feel that connection online when I'm reading, right? So
yeah. I think what I'm not saying is that Reiki training isn't needed. What I am saying is that Reiki training that helps align us with the truth of who we are and that doesn't detract from our own personal power. For me, that's the key. Yeah, because that's something that often comes up. Well, what are we saying here, Jayne? That we don't need Reiki training. What I'm saying is that the majority of practitioners that I work with are already trained and are backfilling the holes and gaps from their practice. So if the initial training isn't of the sort that I'm referring to when I was just speaking a second ago, then what we start to find is that actually it has detracted from personal power as opposed to help support someone to just live, lead, serve from that place of sovereignty.
Yeah, I was originally trained in Azui Rahiho as well, and something just didn't click to me. And I think that's why I went on that journey. So this is why I can resonate with you, where I was trying to find that just right. And that Azui Holy Fire energy, that had no lineage, right? You have that individual connection. The teacher's not touching you. You have your opportunity to go on your own path, add in other different system as well. So that gave it that kind of freedom that I think that I needed at that time. But yeah, you have only so much time to give that student. I mean, it is beneficial to have that teacher to help guide you for those questions, but teachers don't always have all the answers either. So that's why it's important to do that research yourself, right? I had someone online who posted something and he said, this is my master teacher's manual. This is the timeline. And I looked at the timeline and I said, I messaged back. I'm like, hey, you might want to look at this because this timeline, it says that Azui connected with the energy and he was 5 years old at this time. And he's like, my teacher's correct. That's it. You're wrong. And I'm like, well, we know when he was born. We know when he died. Do the math. The math's not mathing. But they were so stuck into, no, my teacher is correct. This is it. Yeah. This is everything. And they weren't even open to something that you could kind of easily prove. So open to this, that like, okay, this isn't making sense. The dots are not connecting. Let me go a little bit more. And we're finding also too, like Justin B. Stein released some information that shows Azui CV. So now we're piecing more things together. There's questions as when I learned about him, it was Dr. Azui. And now people are like, yeah, I'm a doctor. Maybe an academic or a title of respect. So now we're having to shift again. It's like, oh my goodness, my manual, I'm going to have to redo it.
I think you raised such a brilliant point there about discernment and not giving our power away to someone because they're in that perceived position of authority at the top of the tree. Ask the questions. You know, like a Reiki master, I dropped that title many years ago, but a Reiki master or a mentor, a guide are the words that I prefer to use now, are just human beings like anyone else. Let's ask the questions. You know, and you raise also brilliant things in there about the distance, space, and time. When we were speaking before, you know, about hands-on or hands-off, or the power of work in person versus online, attunement, so on and so forth. And I think if we understood energy and distance, space, and time and what it actually meant, and how there are no barriers there in terms of spiritual realm and connection, we could open ourselves to a much more evolutionary and evolving way of connecting and working with universal life force energy, Reiki, for sure.
Oh, beautiful. So when it is time for you to get an energetic tune-up, what are some qualities that you look for in a Reiki practitioner?
Yeah, so that's a brilliant question, okay? Because I've had a really, I would say, complex and challenging relationship with this at different points in time. Because I think in the beginning, I would seek out a practitioner that felt, I'm going to say safe and in inverted commas, okay? And much like, I'm sure it's Gabor Mate that said, just because something's normal doesn't mean it's healthy. I'm going to speak about this in a similar way. At that time, I was seeking practitioners who felt safe, but weren't necessarily healthy, nor providing me with what I needed. Therefore, now, I'm not saying that practitioners should be filling any holes and gaps in us and providing us with everything that we need. But I was personally seeking out practitioners that kept me in a cycle, a repeated cycle of going back again and again and again, outsourcing that power, putting it on them. For me, it's like a sacred triangle. A practitioner, let's say, my spiritual team, my guides, however your listeners refer to them, angels, Mother Mary, goddess, whatever, and then there's me. And a practitioner can be a really vital, pivotal support in that. But really the relationship is between my spiritual team and me, and I want someone who can help support that journey, not kind of detract from it. So I was seeking out practitioners that would fill the hole in the gap with the ideas of grandeur at that time. So that was more about me recognizing and understanding me. And then eventually I started seeking out spaces, mentors, practitioners, where difference didn't necessarily mean disrespect, but instead invited a deeper return home to myself, where I could really consider, you know, what was going on with me. So I think for me, rather than an authentic and ethical practitioner will always pull me straight in. They just will. I can feel it. I can sense it. But I couldn't back then because I didn't have that level of discernment that you're speaking about there. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
So for me, it was about just taking a step. It would be, you know, taking a step back and thinking to myself, am I going to this person because I'm trying to fill a hole in a gap and I'm going to keep going round and round in that loop cycle? Or actually, am I seeking them out because I genuinely feel like they can support me to further my growth, to help? Like if I was going to say a practitioner, I'm not going to come back again, I'm not going to see you next week, would they be genuinely delighted that I'm taking that time to integrate the benefits of their healing session back in my everyday life? Or would they be like, no, you must come back and see me? Because there's a different energy to both of those things.
Sure. That's an interesting point. You know, I mean, you went on this journey to bridge that gap between earth and sky, right? And now you have your spiritual team. And when I have that particular client that keeps coming back and back, I'll say to them, hey, maybe it would be beneficial for you to get like a Reiki training because you can do this yourself. Anyone can do this. Yeah. And a lot of times they're like, no, I can't do this. And it's like, but you're doing the healing, you know? So I like how that you said that about how you kind of step back to see if there's something that's missing. And it makes you think, why do you keep coming back when you can get the tools yourself to place in that energetic toolbox, right? So that you can help do that healing for yourself. So beautiful. So as you stand here now, as you have worked with helping clients, your aspiring Reiki practitioners to claim that authentic connection, what advice would you give someone who's just starting out in spiritual work?
Buckle up, buttercup. I'm just kidding. That's a joke. I jest, Tracy. I jest. Well, I only jest in part. For me, it's about remembrance and reclamation. In my experience, we're not going to find that in a textbook. We're not going to find that following steps. You're not going to find that through mental body understanding or learning, whether that's, understanding that you're a people pleaser or an overgiver, or that you would like to fall further in a deeper trust, or that fear's featuring for you. All of these many, facets that for me I have explored and continue to explore, whether it's that or understanding Reiki theory. For me, it's about an emotional body, home with intuition, and spiritual body, home with felt wisdom, connection. And I would have loved somebody to say to me, do you know what, Jayne? Foremost, this is all about nervous system regulation. It's actually why I give away a mini course. There are 4 complementary mini courses within my Spirit-Led Reiki pathway, all titled Being Empowered Empath. And the first thing within there is about nervous system regulation, because I would hear people speak on boundaries, for example. And I was not able to instate a boundary, but I wanted to, but my nervous system couldn't hold it. I couldn't start my own podcast. I have my own podcast that's called Reiki Redefined, until my nervous system could hold the level of discomfort to allow me to not stay small anymore, to allow me to stand in that power. Because it's fine and well and simple saying, let's stand in our sovereignty, let's claim, reclaim our authentic connection, let's stand true in our authentic personal power. These are words. Like, how are we actually doing that? And I would really have loved someone to say to me, nervous system, go there first, alongside your emotional and spiritual body connection. Don't just cognitively understand, whether it be the Reiki theory or whether it be whatever it is that's going on for you over here in terms of your healing and growth. So that's what I would say, that from my lived experience in terms of advice.
Make an interesting point, because we're getting information from 1922. This is where that started, even though there were other systems prior to Uzui. But life has changed so dramatically since 1922. There wasn't TV and all this technology that we have now, and we are constantly flooded with information all day long, right? In the palm of our hands. So it would make sense to shift this training where we give more time to the self Reiki to help the nervous system to get us calmed down, because even just with the global pandemic, how our nervous systems have been affected by that, we still don't know the long-term effects of that. And so by taking a more slower pace, because there's programs where in a weekend you can become a master, right? 5 days, 7 days, in 2 months. Wouldn't it make more sense in our world that we live in that we can just focus more on getting that nervous system cleared, things calm down, settled, right? And then we go forward and move into the techniques for the self Reiki and then the training. Maybe it needs to be longer than 1 day of training, right? Maybe it needs to be several days, right?
My online pathway is a 3-month pathway, and I think because of it has over £1,000 worth of complementary materials, so that people, no matter where they're coming in, can come in. Sometimes I really dislike the "to meet you where you're at" phrase, but it is just, and it works here, so that irrespective of where someone comes into that, they can find what is right for them at that time. Yeah,
it's their spiritual pathway, their pathway.
Yeah, their pathway. Aye. And it's very unique and individual per person. So it's as least generic as it possibly ever could be. It's also about integrating in for me rather than taking time out. With mainstream Reiki, self-Reiki typically is the way to connect and use Reiki energy. For me, we can weave the spirit of Reiki energy for support into our everyday life. So we're really living that, it's an animistic, I suppose we would want to call it, life, animism, where everything is an energy and every energy's got a spirit, and we can lean on that for healing and support throughout the course of our days really safely and really effectively, as well as spirit-led Reiki journey. And so it's just, for me, it's using the head a little bit to think, what support would I have liked? What didn't I have? Where did it go wrong for me? And where, in my experience with speaking to people for the, over the past decade plus of practitioners, what are they telling me? What are they actually saying?
Yeah.
Which is beautiful to be able to co-create something like that for other people.
Right, because there was a shift. Once Madame Takata passed, it just seemed that all different styles and systems of Reiki began to pop up from the 80s and beyond. So now we have just so many varieties of specialty and complementary Reiki that where do you start? Where do you go? What do you listen to?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think it's one of the things that most people, when people come to me and say, Jayne, try and help me here.
Yeah.
For me, it's about the, coming back to your own ancestral, animistic and cultural roots. So the Reiki feels right on an innate level for you, as opposed to, most recently I have a graduate, and she's trained she's an Usui Reiki master, she's trained in Angelic Reiki, she's trained in Seekum Reiki, and still felt fragmented across all these different modalities. And what Spirit-led Reiki's allowed her to do is weave all of these together, make something really coherent that feels wonderful for her. So I think it's just, it's a really beautiful way of working for me.
Beautiful. So what books do you recommend?
Books. So I'm a fan of a book. I love a book for many different reasons. Now, I'm not a fan of a spiritual self-help book, predominantly because I consumed so many over the years and just didn't know what to do with them. I couldn't integrate them on the emotional and spiritual level, right? So if I now delve into a spiritual self-help type book, they are always ones that are practical, ones that can actually tangibly help me in that moment. But I also like to understand more. I adore connection. I thrive on depth and intimacy of connecting with another human being. That's what makes me tick. It's why I do what I do. So I also really enjoy reading books where I understand more about someone's journey, whether that be a creative, a politician, or whatever. And on top of that, I also love the intersection of gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity, disability. So given all of that, I'll name a couple of my favourites for you. My top on practical spiritual self-help would be The Cauldron and the Drum by Rhonda McCrimmon, who's a beautiful and dear friend of mine. I love her very much. And the Cauldron and the Drum essentially will take you through the Celtic Cauldron power centres, the alternative to chakras. And for me, Rhonda's work has allowed me to stop spiritual bypassing, essentially, and actually have the tools and skills to heal through the Celtic Cauldron power centre system of healing. So that's perfect if one of your listeners is thinking to themselves, I've been going round in circles for so long. I understand what I need to do, but how do I actually do it? That book, brilliant. Tosha Silver's Change Me Prayers. Absolutely stunning for someone who is a recovering control freak and who aspires to live every day. And I don't ever think we're fully recovered when it. I'll let you know. I'll give you another 20 years, right? Someone who, I aspire to live in that beautiful divine surrender every day. Just wonderful. And in terms of the connection and the spiritual, not spiritual books where I understand more about a person, Callum Robinson, Making of a Craftsman, is absolutely stunning work. Callum's another one of my good friends. And if you're someone who loves the land, loves working with her hands, really wants to, or resonates with the grit and the determination to keep a passion alive. Callum would never call himself a spiritual person. The One Amba is a deeply spiritual book, in my opinion. Beautiful, beautiful book. And Amanda Morell's word, now I'm not going to say the second part of this, right? Because sometimes it can not be great on having words like these in a podcast. But the first part of the word starts with sla, and the second part of the word is with ut. And it's basically a feminist guide to reclaiming the English language, which has been particularly enlightening for me. A wonderful read. So that would be my kind of top little handful for sure.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So what services do you offer? Trainings, classes?
So the Spirit-Led Reiki pathway is my 3-month online pathway, and this is not about replacing one dogma with another. It's about returning to the source of power. And that's for aspiring and qualified practitioners. So that's my pathway. I also have a graduate's hearth that the pathway graduates go into, because they get to the point where we're all thinking, great, now we've unearthed our unique medicine and I've merged modalities and I've done what I want to do, but how am I going to birth that out into the world? So I work with a soul, we work in there with a soul aligned visibility and messaging specialist who doesn't just, much like myself, churn one in, churn one out. So graduates then go into the hearth. And then I've got my 30-minute on-demand workshop. It's called Lifting the Veil on Reiki. That's for practitioners who refuse to dilute their wisdom. I've got my podcast that's called Reiki Redefined. That's for people who really want to trust themselves more than they trust the system. And my free online community, which is guru free. So there's no hierarchy or all-known behaviour. And a lot of what is in there for free will allow people to access to what mainstream Reiki would call mainstream Reiki 1 inside the community. It's a beautiful space in there. I really love it.
Beautiful. So where can we find you if we want to get in touch with you, either online or in person?
So all my work's online. You will get me at reikiredefined.com or my podcast, Reiki Redefined, or at Reiki Redefined on TikTok.
Beautiful. And I do find you on TikTok, so I get to see you every single day on TikTok. When does your podcast, does it come out weekly, monthly?
Yeah, podcast, it drops every Thursday normally.
Beautiful. Well, that ends the first part of our journey. I'm going to guide you to the second part, which are questions from social media and listeners and Reiki students. Here we go. Number 1, how can a person escape mainstream Reiki limitations to build an authentic practice?
Great question. Great question. So I wanted to be able to give listeners something that they can do today if they're thinking, yeah, Jayne's resonating with me here. I want to explore that a bit more. So for me, it's about working in a way that feels really aligned and coherent. So that we can all birth our own authentic connection, practice, service offering, teaching pathway. That feels like us, natural extension of who we are. Here, it's about breaking free from any copy-paste methods, any restrictions, any of those how do I X questions, work with guides, merge modalities, price my work without symbols, find deeper connection, stop feeling drained after working with other people, backfilling those holes and gaps. So how do we actually do that then? Firstly, we understand what we've already spoken about when it comes to authentic connection, being aligned with our own animistic, cultural and ancestral lineage. But the practical tool that we need here is spirit-led Reiki journeying. And if you're pulled, you can learn how to do that. There's a season 5, episode 1 of my podcast, Reiki Redefined, talks you through that on a practical level with their supporting materials in the podcast notes, also access to my one-to-one support. So if you want to dive into that, then that would be the best place to do it and the best place to start.
Beautiful. And I do see you on TikTok where you go into a little bit more in depth in clips as well. So if people just want a little bit of information, they can check out your TikTok page. So number 2, this seems to be a common thing with students as they get out into the world and they begin their Reiki sessions. Why do many Reiki practitioners absorb their clients' energy?
It's the biggest thing that I'm DM'd about on TikTok. Feeling drained after sessions, feeling ill. Some people even at really bad crisis point and burnout. And the solution for me, I've never really seen fully and properly explained, and I believe it's why so many practitioners stay stuck. So let me dig into that. Many people who find me are already deeply intuitive, walking their own path. They've already got so much wisdom. So as an example, Kat, who's one of my graduates, who I speak about frequently and is on my website, so I'm not speaking out of turn sharing this in the podcast with you. She was already trained in energy medicine, and she is a psychedelic coach and facilitator, and she was getting massively ill. Yeah, after working with clients. Now, this is true of people who have previously trained in Reiki, like sometimes Reiki masters of 25, 30 years are coming into my DMs, and people who haven't but are energy workers. And she said to me that she was always absorbing the client's energy, feeling really drained, ill 4 days afterwards. And it happens because of what's called energetic bleed. When a practitioner's personal energy and a client's personal energy merge, they bleed over, or when a practitioner is using their personal energy to do some of the healing work, as opposed to Reiki energy, universal life force energy. So you might want to think of it. I like to speak about it like an egg. So the yolk of the egg is personal energy. That's personal power. Okay, that originates from someone's own energetic system, and then you've got the white of the egg. That's universal life force energy. That's Reiki. Universal consciousness that doesn't originate from someone's own personal power. They're part of the same whole, but they're really distinct. And if we haven't been shown how to work with both personal life force energy and universal life force energy, personal power and Reiki energy, then this is what starts to happen, as well as just general energetic hygiene. Most of the people are working with protection rituals. Most of the time, people are grounding more. It's not that. It's the fundamental principle of understanding the energies and becoming the safe and effective hollow bone. Because when we're in a hollow bone state, we are not absorbing or taking on anything. We're merely the bridge for spiritually guided healing to happen. And they're the two biggies that mostly training I find leaves out. And it's the very thing that absolutely eradicates energetic depletion every time, without an exception.
Right. It's almost like there needs to be an empathic Reiki for those individuals that are empaths and they have that wounded healer within them that, oh my goodness, it's not doing anything, so I have to intervene, so that they realize and trust that the energy is doing what it needs to do. So
yeah, perfect point. It's why I've got the bonus Being Empowered Empath course within the pathway itself for free, because everybody comes with such different experience. And there are so many things, not just on an energetic level, but on a personal level, like a personal healing physical level, that can add into being that the wounded empath, as you're saying.
Yeah, wounded healer that like, okay, and I can feel it too. Like, but it took me some time to realize like, oh, my energy is getting mixed up, that I have to step back and just trust the energy to flow. So yeah, I can see you as new on the beginning of the journey where that gets confusing. And so that's almost where you have to have that special part for empaths, those people that feel that need to, I have to help, I have to serve, I have to put others before myself, and not really grasping that you need to do the self Reiki on yourself. You have to heal those wounds to truly be of service to others. So, third question. How does the Reiki hierarchy and gatekeeping actually affect your energy?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. So firstly, I want to say that gatekeeping, because this has come up a lot recently for me, gatekeeping can be sacred, okay? When there is an elder there and present passing something down. In many cultures, the role of gatekeeping is not to exclude, but it's to initiate. The elder held the lineage. The rite of passage wasn't like a barrier. It was an entry, like into something alive. Knowledge was moving ancestor to descendant through blood, through the land. Medicine wasn't taught, it was lived and it was embodied. And it was passed on through presence. But here in the West, there are no elders, or certainly very few I found. So lineage was broken. Yeah, ways have been erased. And what is left, I've found, is this, well, I talked about it right at the beginning of the podcast, this type of spiritual orphaning, a quiet hunger for something that should be passed down, but actually isn't passed down. And you feel that, right? You feel that when you're pulled towards something like Reiki, but then the systems around it or within it can make you doubt yourself. Yeah. People will highlight that frequently, and I see it reflected in my own personal experience. So when systems like Reiki attach gatekeeping, no, I'm absolutely not saying that that's how it started out, attach gatekeeping through hierarchy and attunements and right ways and dogmatic structures, then something shifts, right? The gatekeeping, sorry, is not protecting a lineage, it's protecting a borrowed system. And that's the difference. Okay, so Reiki hierarchy and gatekeeping can impact the energy of all your bodies in many ways. We just spoke about it there.
Yeah.
The emotional, spiritual, mental, physical toll of not being the safe and effective hollow bone, not being able to work with both personal energy and universal life force energy. Yeah. Taking on others' pain at your own cost. Like that's people at burnout point. Like that's how Reiki hierarchy and gatekeeping impact. Not to mention also inadvertently that when we don't harness what we can with our own, animistic, cultural, ancestral lineage when it comes to Reiki connection, then that spiritual orphaning continues, and that impacts all of our bodies way more than we might consciously understand until we understand it. You know, who we are, how we experience life. And that option is always open and available to all of us to be able to work with Reiki energy in that way.
Right, right. And it sure is draining watching, especially online, people who are supposed to be healers, love and light, go at it because they feel their system's better or it needs to be done this way. There was a conversation I saw unfolding about in some different systems, there are levels beyond that level 3. Like one had like the 98th level, one had like a 25 level, and they were, no, absolutely not. It's this way and this way. And it is draining because it makes you sad because we're all here to help serve and to help support each other and encourage each other. And who am I to say that this is the right way? Maybe that way is the right way for them, and just let them be on their healing journey as long as they're not doing any harm. Reiki doesn't do any harm. So, move forward. Maybe that lineage that they had, there is 98 levels to it. There's no such thing as a grandmaster. You'll hear some people say, like if someone puts, I'm a money Reiki grandmaster, people lose their mind. They're like, absolutely, no, 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 no. And you see all these no's underneath it. And it's just like, oh my goodness. And this person was so excited about sharing the news that I did it. I finally finished my training. I'm going to go out in the world and do amazing things. So that does drain your energy, right? When you see and read all that.
Yeah, for me, I just feel like I love staying true to who I am, true to the way I work, true to my guides, true to what I'm here to do in the world. And much like we said just before we started recording, right, I do feel like there is space for every single person, practitioner, mentor, if we all work in a way that it's just authentic and guided by who we are, innately, uniquely. Yeah. And there's space for everyone on this path, and everyone's path, their own path. So for me, it's just about allowing everyone to be who they need to be and what they need to be, how and what, and when they need to be that. Right?
Yeah.
My good friend, Wendy Dooner, I'm sure coined a phrase one time, something along the lines of, there are 1,000 ways to live a life, Jayne. There are 1,000 ways. And I thought, absolutely, Wendy, very wise. Wendy's very wise. I love it.
Well, that was our last question. So we've been chatting. Is there anything that you have forgotten or something you want to share with the listeners? The floor is yours.
Tracy, I don't think so. Perhaps this. If we are interested at all in human design, RAS human design. Now, I'm not massively, but I always love to keep an interest in different theories, different, different ways of doing things and on this spiritual path. Just now, heading into 2027, we are moving away from a 400-year cycle, away from safety and homogenization into the rise of the phoenix coming into 2027, which is safety and differentiation. So I firmly believe that now is a time like no other, where people, I start to see it, and the people that are coming to seek me out for support. Now is a time more than ever before where people crave authentic guides, transformational guides that walk the talk, guides that genuinely want to support from that beautiful place of service. There is a place, like I just said, for all Reiki practitioners. For me personally, I did the £25 half an hour light relaxing Reiki on the high street. And for me, there was always more, there was always deeper. And I'm really privileged to have been guided towards finding that. And now being able to help people do the same thing. But now for me is a time more than ever before that if someone's thinking, shall I do it? Shall I train? Shall I find my own service offering? Shall I take the risk and do this as opposed to continue down, the route of whatever career it is, the path I'm on just now? I believe that coming into 2027 will rise the phoenix and the move to differentiation. More people than ever before will be crying out for these types of authentic practitioners and leaders. So if you're listening and putting it off, go for it.
Yeah, just take that first step on the journey. You never know where it's going to lead you,
Never
Yeah.
do.
And Reiki could just be a small part of your journey. It can take you in a whole different direction. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Where can we find you again? What's your website?
So reikiredefined.com, at Reiki Redefined on TikTok, or my podcast, Reiki Redefined.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to join me on this Ready, Set, Reiki journey.
An absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Tracy. It's always a delight to connect with you.
Beautiful. All right, my wonderful listeners, if you'd like your question featured on Ready, Set, Reiki, reach out, www.readysetreiki.com, or check me out on social media. I'm Tracy Seawright, and this has been Ready, Set, Reiki.